All right. I think we are ready to start. I want to welcome everybody tonight to the Baltimore County Fire Department Emergency Medical Services Academy. This night's talk is on mind over matter, something that needs to be talked about much more often. Our presenters tonight will be Rachael Belcher and Jessica Letourneau. Rachael is a paramedic with Baltimore County Fire Department over at 54. She has over 25 years experience in EMS. She started her career as a 911 operator and dispatcher. She has a wealth of knowledge, especially frontline, and firsthand knowledge for her advocacy for mental health and wellness for our first responders. Driven by overcoming her own mental health struggles over decades of exposure to trauma and grief in line of duty, she has dedicated her recent work to advocating, educating, and raising awareness surrounding the unique challenges faced by those on the front lines. Her mission is to inspire change and advocate for mental wellness education and resiliency tools to become a regular part of operational readiness nationwide. Jessica is a LCPC who has been working in the mental health field for over 20 years. She has been established in private practice since 2013, and is the CEO of New Perspectives. Prior to private practice, she worked with children, adolescents, and adults in various settings such as inpatient psychiatric hospitalization, residential treatment, Veterans Affairs, in their intensive outpatient programs, in-home behavioral intervention, and outpatient clinics. She is most passionate about treating military veterans and law enforcement and our first responders. In addition to her tenure in the mental health field, she has an extensive background in health and fitness. She has worked as a CrossFit coach, personal trainer, and group fitness instructor for 15 years. It is her belief that mental and physical health go hand in hand. I agree, by the way. When the mind is healthy, the body follows suit. Jessica utilizes a direct strength-based approach when educating clients about trauma, attachment responses, creative coping strategies, and autonomic nervous system. Her approach incorporates research with attachment theory, neuroscience, internal family systems model, somatic resourcing, brain spotting, and EMDR therapy. I want to welcome both of you tonight and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, Dr. Sagal. And good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Rachael Belcher. I have created this program out of necessity, really, with the help of Jessica. And after 18 years in EMS, I began to experience a lot of compassion fatigue. I'm feeling burnt out, just feeling like something just was not right, and was looking for resources and was really having a hard time finding them. So through my struggles, and now at the other side of that, I decided to develop this program that's kind of more of a comprehensive program, more than just awareness. By the end of this class, you'll walk away with actionable things that you can do to stay healthy throughout and through the end of your career and into retirement. So I appreciate you all for being here. Jessica, would you like to say anything else?
Yeah, sure. I am a therapist who owns a private practice, and I specialize in working with first responders and military. And at this point, first responders and military are the only folks who are on my caseload. I just can't go back. So the information that I'm going to go over for my portion of the presentation is what I teach to my clients in therapy sessions, and then we figure out how to apply it to their life individually. And what works for them, oftentimes professionally, doesn't work for them personally so much, and there are a lot of struggles family-wise. So I'm hoping today that not only can you learn what to do on the job, but you can also learn what to do when you're off your shift as well.
Thank you. There should also be some resources available, and we'll get clarification on where you can find those that you can access and utilize after the course. And we'll talk about those throughout. I have the examples printed out. And so let's get started. Okay. So this course is called Mind Over Mayday. Let's see. All right. So, anyone in the fire service is familiar with the meaning of a tactical mayday. And when a mayday is called, it's everyone shows up, everyone is there. So it's a distress signal that the firefighter needs is an immediate danger and they require assistance. The reason I chose to call this program Mind Over Mayday is because it's meant to prepare you to avoid reaching a mental Mayday. It's meant to help you to try to avoid reaching crisis. All right. In this class, we're going to talk about compartmentalization, how to process emotions, and traumatic events, how to identify red flags within yourself and others, the importance of connection, how to be aware of what's happening in your body and mind, and tools on how to mitigate the stressors of the job, and how those stressors of the job can then carry over into your life, and how to avoid crisis. We're going to talk about post-traumatic growth, which is a very important thing to stress, and practical ways to stay present, ground, and complete the stress response. All right. So what do we know about first responders? We were talking about this earlier, that those that come into this job were a very unique type of person. In reading about it, it's known as the warrior archetype. We're the ones who run toward the danger when everyone else is running away. And there's a lot of strengths that come with that. We're everyday people who regularly face extraordinary, often traumatic situations as part of their work. However, the current education and resources available to help manage and mitigate the psychological stressors of the job are insufficient. This can create challenges in coping with the effects of the job and can bleed over into our personal lives. And that says can, but it should say will. This course will help you become more aware of how you currently manage stress and offer practical tips to improve your coping strategies. All right. So we're going to jump right in to compartmentalization. Anyone who's been in this career for any amount of time, we know that there are certain things that we need to do psychologically, mentally, in order to be able to carry out the duties of our job. One of those things is compartmentalize. It's not something we're taught how to do. It is just something that we naturally evolve into doing. And what that is the mental process of separating conflicting or uncomfortable thoughts, emotions, or experiences into distinct compartments or categories. So it's a fancy way of just describing how we cope with stress, events, and situations. What's interesting about compartmentalization, and I talk about this a lot on the next slide, it'll say, imagine a suitcase. So if you think about this suitcase, when we come into the job, depending on our very unique life situation and experiences before we come into the job, all of our suitcases are going to look very different. Some of our suitcases are going to be big and huge and empty. We haven't experienced any traumatic events. We haven't experienced anything to fill this suitcase up yet. Some of us will have little tiny suitcases and it will already be full. And this just speaks to how everyone will experience and react and respond to stressful situations in completely different ways. What affects you might not affect me at all, and what affects me might not affect you at all. So when we experience stressful or traumatic events on the job, we learn to compartmentalize in order to carry out our duties. Think of this suitcase as a temporary file where we put thoughts and emotions that we're unable to process at the time. The thing is if we don't go back and process these things after the event, they'll build up, leading to the suitcase bursting at the seams, or what we also call this crisis. Jessica, do you have any additional thoughts on that from a clinician perspective?
I think from a clinician perspective that we have to, the job requires that we have to be able to compartmentalize, but at the same time, compartmentalizing over and over and over a lot of times means that somebody is just going to take it and put it on the shelf and never get back to it. And then that shelf gets very full, it gets clogged up, and the real term for compartmentalization is dissociation. It's out of our awareness. And even though we're not thinking about it, it still weighs down on us. And it really does impact us on a thought level, an emotional level, body sensation level. Compartmentalizing keeps us separated from when our bodies start talking to us as well. And we may not even
Thank you.
recognize when our family and our friends are trying to talk to us about things that are going on in our lives because it's put away. It didn't affect me. I'm off work now. It doesn't bother me. It was a long time ago. It didn't matter. Somebody else had it worse.
Yes. And it's also interesting how once your brain gets into this compartmentalizing cycle, we take our brains home with us. We don't leave them at work. So oftentimes, even this will carry over into our personal life. And if we have an argument with our spouse, if we have a health condition, or you name it, somehow, typically, we kind of are able to put that into its own compartment because that's what we've just learned to do. So things that happen at work and how we handle those stressors will absolutely carry over into our personal life, and it will affect our relationships eventually. And if anybody, I would love to know if you guys have heard of the term compartmentalization, if you are aware that that's something that we do, if you've ever been taught anything about this or kind of how to deal with it. Just kind of interested to see, because I knew that I did that, but I guess I really didn't understand that I should have been going back and processing these things in order to kind of dump out the suitcase, to go back about how we all have a different size suitcase. Some of ours is full and some of ours is empty. When we go back to process these things, it kind of teaches us how to dump it out every so often, dump it out. And of course, every now and then there's going to be that sticky call or that sticky thing that just doesn't want to dump out. And at that point, we're going to need a little extra help with someone like Jessica to help us work through those sticky things. But if we can kind of have some techniques and tools to help us dump that suitcase out on a regular basis, it will kind of prevent it from busting open. All right. So this is just talking about ways we can start to process these traumatic events or emotions. And it sounds so simple, but just simply acknowledging that the thing happened is the first step. I don't know how many times at work I would have a terrible call. And of course, any child call is what stands out in front of me. And I'm not going to go into any details because I'm not trying to traumatize anyone. But I will say that we would have a really bad call and we would clean up and we would go back in service and we would go get dinner, and it would never, it would never be spoken about. Occasionally, maybe we would be offered SISM or peer support, and 9 out of 10 times it would be declined because everybody kind of felt like, well, if I say yes, then I'm going to look weak, or I'm going to look, like I can't handle the job. Or I think we've all heard these, I like to call them like generational malignancies, these things that have been passed down from generations in the fire department of suck it up, buttercup, get over it, keep going, this is what you signed up for, that kind of thing. So actually acknowledging that a call has affected us, and that is starting to change, thankfully, but acknowledging that a call has kind of affected us is difficult for some of us. So just acknowledging it, that was a really hard call, that was a really bad call, kind of even just saying like, well, man, that really sucked. Allow yourself to feel the emotion without judgment. So what's interesting is right after a call, you might not have any emotion. You might still be detached, you might still be turned off. You may not feel any emotion for like 24 to 72 hours after this event. But anything that does come up, especially if it's connected to something that has happened to you in your prior life or in your life during the career, in your personal life, that has kind of like a string attached to it. And I say that in a metaphorical way. Let's say you had a standard cardiac arrest with an elderly person, and that elderly person reminded you of a grandparent. That can really affect some of us. So, I feel grief, I feel guilty, I feel anger, whatever it is that you feel. It's not good or bad or indifferent. It is just what it is. And just allow yourself to feel it. Talk about it with someone who understands, whether it be a friend or coworker, a therapist. And if you find that a certain amount of time has gone by and these feelings and this, event is still really sticking with you and affecting your life, it's definitely time to seek professional help. And one of the best things we can do for ourselves, which I know everybody in this room gets really good sleep. We're just sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night, full and restful. False. But sleep really is healing for us. So even if we're on shift work and we're not sleeping at work, which most of us don't, at least do your best on your days off to try to get a nap in when you can. Put the phone down and just shut your eyes and allow your brain to have a rest. And I would love to hear if Jessica has any additional comments on that.
I think a way of processing these traumatic events or emotions, the key point here is the awareness and the acknowledgement of it. And rather than putting in that into the suitcase, of just allowing it to be, even though it's part of the job, it's just that it happened, it was uncomfortable, or it was difficult, or it mattered, allowing yourself to have connection with somebody else around it. Or if you don't want to have connection with another person, with a pet, or journaling about it, but really allowing it to be outside of you instead of holding it inside. And as Rachel has said, and everybody knows, that sleep is super important. We need to be able to have that REM sleep to metabolize what happened throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're going to talk about moral injury. With talking about moral injury, this is actually will give you similar symptoms, but it's quite overlapping to PTSD. This is different from PTSD, and I'm gonna have Jessica talk after I say this, just to make sure from a clinical standpoint that what I'm saying is accurate. PTSD stems from things that happened to or around us from an external source, whereas moral injury comes from within us. It has specifically to do with our own morals, our own ethics, and what we feel is right and wrong. So moral injury, it's a psychological, social, or spiritual distress that arises from actions or the lack of them that violate one's deeply held moral beliefs and values. And the way that we heal a moral injury is the tools that you use can sometimes be different than the ones that you would use for PTSD, simply because what you're trying to heal within yourself is coming from within rather than something that happened to you or near you, or you had to be a witness to something. Jessica, do you have any additional?
Sure. The way that I look at moral injury, it's as if our world has been turned, our worldview or our beliefs have been turned upside down because of what we witness. So in the fire service, that if we're witnessing pain and suffering, and then because of that, our worldview shifts to the world's not fair, the world's not a safe place, the world is constantly dangerous. And then we can't kind of shift out of that perspective where we could look at sometimes the world is dangerous and sometimes it's an okay place, or sometimes it's a good place. Sometimes the world is safe, but sometimes it's not. So we end up having this very polarizing view of life and the world because of moral injury, or that God's not, if you're a religious person and then something terrible happens, that God isn't there for you, or psychologically that I'm a bad person, I'm broken because of what you've been through.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So what does moral injury look like in the fire department? So if you Google moral injury, you'll get the definition that was on the previous slide. When it comes to us and what we do for a job, what it looks like for us is, like Jessica mentioned, witnessing suffering and not being able to prevent it or fix it. Sometimes we show up to a situation that is already in play, and there's just simply nothing that we're going to do, no matter how skilled we are, no matter how fast we get there, that will fix that situation. And just simply coming to terms with that, when we are the people who are supposed to fix it, we are the people who are supposed to get there quickly and, make the situation better. Witnessing something that you're not able to do anything about is an example of moral injury. Ethical dilemmas. There's a house fire and you have 5 victims. Who do you rescue first? Should I have rescued this other person first? Would the outcome have been different if we had gotten there faster? Or mass casualty events, where you're tasked with triaging several people, and just it's a very heavy weight that we can carry with us, just having to make those life or death decisions in a split second. Unforeseen consequences of action or inaction, and these can be real or imagined. What's important to know about our brain is that it does not know the difference between reality and our imagination or our thoughts. So if we think we didn't get there fast enough, that's what our brain believes, even if that has absolutely no basis in reality. So could I have done more? Could I have done something differently? Could we have gotten there quicker? And organizational betrayal is a big one as well. Do you not feel supported by your organization? Do you feel like they don't have your back? Do you feel like if you make a mistake, you're going to be chastised for it? And there's many different examples of organizational betrayal. Jessica, would you like to add anything?
As far as the organizational betrayal piece, I think that out of moral injury, that is the number one thing that I see on my caseload. And unfortunately, I hear it a lot with Baltimore County, Baltimore City, that the organization just doesn't have my back. And especially if I come forward and I talk about having a struggle, if I talk about having anxiety or depression or my substance abuse, then I'm going to get a referral for peer support, and then I'm going to have to go to the Center of Excellence, and then I'm going to have to take leave, and then people are going to be watching me. So there's just a hesitation to really be able to share. And I hope that with time that really changes. But I hear about the organizational betrayal over and over again.
Yeah, I have to agree with you in speaking with so many people that I've spoken with, that is oftentimes one of the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So moral injury, I like to think of it as like a gauge, like think of it as like your gas gauge, but not full to empty, where it's moral injury is the first step, and then more moral injury causes compassion fatigue, and then more moral injury can lead to burnout. And burnout, I have experienced it, and it is awful. You just have no desire to be doing your job anymore, something that you chose to do out of the absolute love for helping others and being a contributing member to society and to your community. And when you feel that you genuinely don't want to do it anymore, that is a true sign that there's something really seriously wrong, just because you know how passionate you are about that. So then we talk about detachment, cynicism, diminished job satisfaction, depression, anxiety, anger, and all of these things will show themselves in your personal life as well. Do you have a short temper with your kids? Are you getting into more spats with your spouse or your partner? Do you have difficulty solving minor problems? In the morning when you're walking out the door and you spill your coffee, are you absolutely, you know, going just massively angry? And anger is a big one that kind of is one of the pretty big red flags that I've seen that comes out a lot, where you're getting angry over things that you normally wouldn't get angry about. And then detachment, obviously, certainly for a relationship standpoint, yes, you're detached from work. For myself, when I was struggling at work, I didn't want to be around my shift. And I love my shift, but I didn't want to be around them. I didn't want to sit around the table and chit chat and goof off and, talk to them. I wanted to sit alone and just be by myself. Jessica, just from your standpoint and your practice, what are some things that you've seen?
Some of the things that I've seen are when people hit this, when first responders hit this part of either compassion fatigue or burnout, or even being with diminished job satisfaction, that it's like they can't quite relate to their partners anymore. They can't quite relate to their friends anymore. They can't have normal conversations. That what they see on the job, they get very, very focused on that. And because life doesn't make sense anymore, it's almost as if nothing else matters, nothing else is important. So they may have a hard time relating to their spouse or their partner, of their partner's doing a regular corporate level job, and they decide, well, what you're going through is stupid. You didn't pull somebody out of a burning building. That person's problem is still their problem. It's still difficult for them nonetheless. It's not life or death, but it's still a problem for them. And let me tell you, I can be guilty as a therapist to even say that I work with all first responders and military. When I still have a few clients who aren't that, I have to check myself too to say their problem is still significant. Even though they're not at risk of death or injury on their job, it's still difficult for them. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
It absolutely makes sense. Why don't we kind of take a temperature check here and see if anyone has any questions, comments, thoughts on these things that we're talking about? This is a great opportunity to ask Jessica, who is a licensed clinician, any questions that you might have about any of these things. If you can relate to any of these things. And if no one has anything to say, that's completely fine, and we'll keep moving forward.
we've gotten some comments about sleep, and coming back to sleep hygiene, and just some people have a hard time with the quiet. If that's the case, then you can look at white noise. There are different types of white noise that could be appropriate. Maybe if you use your TV, even though that's not supposed to be great, I guess that with the TV on is better than nothing at all. So we've got on sleep. I don't know if Shannon, I know you've been making a lot of comments about things. I don't know if you want to do any follow-ups that we could answer for you or help you out through this. So I'll give it another moment or so, and we can switch gears, Rach.
Yep. I know she said sometimes the comments are a bit delayed, so.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So I do see this comment here, Shannon, about the BS. Is that coworker things or organization things or personal life things? And it says here, I don't know what a sticky call is. So a sticky call is like something that it just is coming back to you. It's coming back to you in your dreams. It's coming back to you in your nightmares. If you drive past where the call was, you're remembering it vividly. And what's interesting is that if you've been doing this job long enough, when you have a type of call, for me, suicide calls are horrible for me, and I've had so many. So when I have one, I'm experiencing that call, but then I'm also re-experiencing every other single call that I've ever had like that. It's almost as if my mind completely subconsciously, without my permission, opens up the Rolodex and kind of shows me every single call like that I've had, and kind of just gives me a review like I needed my memory refreshed. And that is very rude of my brain to do. But that's kind of what happens is if you experience the same type of call, or let's say you had some kind of traumatic event in your life, anytime you experience a call that kind of brings back those feelings or emotions from that will tend to do the same thing. It's kind of just opening that Rolodex. So you're not just experiencing the current thing, you are also then piling on all that other grief, in a sense, is what, is kind of what it can be. So that's what a sticky call is. It's a call that just, you can't stop thinking about it, even, months, years. I have a family member who was a first responder 30 years ago, and there are still calls that this person vividly remembers. That is a sticky call.
Okay.
All right, let me get out of this so I can see. So these are, oops, I didn't mean to do that. All right. Emotional repression. That's something we're all really good at. It can show up in undesirable ways that may be the first sign that there's a problem. So anytime you're holding in your feelings about something, you're not expressing your true feelings or your true thoughts, or you aren't, whether it's to someone else or whether it's in a journal or whether it's, by yourself and just thinking through it, however you choose to do that, repressing those things not can, but absolutely will come out in undesirable ways. It can come out as, and it never happens at a time when it's convenient. It can come out as emotional outbursts. It can come out as actual physical medical problems. It can come out as physical pain. It can come out as disease. It can come out as autoimmune problems. It can come out as a million different things. So how to recognize red flags in yourself and others. This is just some ways to kind of start to recognize in yourself, is there an issue? Is there something that I need to do here? So sudden or gradual changes from baseline. Are you isolating? Are you drinking more? And talking about drinking, which is a really, really, prevalent thing that's seen in the fire department, is that in order to numb how we're feeling, we will drink a lot. And that seems like it's helping at the moment, because it's allowing you to forget about your problems. But what it's actually doing is now causing additional problems for the future. So in the long term, it's going to make things more difficult. People staring blankly, statements like nothing matters, no longer doing things they used to enjoy. You used to like to play sports or go to the gym or hang out with your friends or take walks out in nature and you just are finding yourself staying in bed or staying on the couch or scrolling on your phone for hours on end, and calling out of work more frequently for unexplained reasons, and outbursts of anger, again, goes back to these things also carry on into your personal life. So this can look like sudden relationship problems, trouble with parenting, and losing friendships or distance from friendships. And I would love to hear if you have any insight on that, Jessica.
One of the big red flags to you first start working with somebody is really just this closing down of life, and that's typically why they end up caseload. And one of the key phrases when I ask them, "What do you do for fun?" and I get the answer, "Well, I used to." I used to go to the gym. I used to play sports. I used to have friends. I used to be able to show up in life. I used to be able to socialize. And so that person becomes a shell of who they are. And it's this very protective thing. It's not, their body is bringing them into this survival state. The world gets smaller because the world feels too dangerous and they stop taking risks in life. And so as you see somebody who is isolating, they're socially shutting down, they're drinking more, they're shutting down through emotion. The blank stare is that dissociation. It's a protective response, it's a survival response, but it means the body's physically present, but the mind has to check out to go somewhere else. And then when nothing matters, we'll talk a little bit later about the autonomic nervous system, but that is a collapsed, immobilized state. And when we're calling out frequently that the body is talking to us and it doesn't feel well, or emotionally, we just can't kind of suck the job anymore.
And this says outbursts of anger. For me, it was actually the opposite, where I had a friend pass away and I couldn't cry. I was sad. I knew I should be crying, but I couldn't. I was so numb. I was so emotionless. I just was I was, present, but not in my body at all. It's almost felt like I was floating above my body and kind of a witness of what was going around me, what was going on around me, but that I wasn't participating. I was just kind of like a ghost watching these things. And for me, that's when I knew, okay, there's an issue. And I know we're talking about all this heavy stuff and all these things that can happen. And maybe there are some of you on here that can really relate to these things, some of these things. And maybe there's some of you on here that have never experienced any of these things. But if you have, I want you to know that it does not have to stay this way forever. These things can be healed from. These things can be worked out. Nothing happens overnight, obviously, but just the acknowledgement and just kind of starting the process is that first step forward into feeling better, feeling like yourself again. I don't want this information to feel like, oh, well, we're just screwed. We're just broken forever. This job sucked out our soul and we'll never get it back. Because I did feel that way. I absolutely felt that way. And I'm here to tell you that you can have your life back. Absolutely have your life back. This is something that is talked about, but I don't think it's stressed how actually important connection is. When we are in that burnout, when we are in that PTSD, when we were in that chronic trauma response, what we want to do is draw back and isolate. And maintaining connection with other people. So kitchen table talk, some of the most important peer support happens in casual conversation around the table. Okay, that's great. And it's true. But consider our EMS folks who are on the medic unit. They don't typically have the opportunity to connect with, their shift, or maybe they're not there, or maybe they don't have a good relationship with the whole shift, or for whatever reason. Sometimes that connection is really, really good and important. And sometimes our shift is actually the source of some of the stress and frustration that we're dealing with. So it can go absolutely either way, and it's going to be individual for every single person, to know whether, which relationships feel healthy and safe to them and which of them don't. The post PTE hot wash in the resources, there's two things, and we're not going to talk too much about it, but I just want to kind of show you. So this talks about what a potentially traumatic event is, and it's called a potentially traumatic event because everybody doesn't experience things the same way. So it's potentially traumatic for everybody. Someone might be traumatized and someone might not. And then this is a hot wash form, a post PTE crew debrief. This is your standard AAR, your standard after action review. The reason why I believe this is an excellent first step right after a call is specifically because you can talk about the tactical actions and the tactical operations of the call that you were on, removed from emotion. And that's a lot more comfortable because you're not going to be asked to confront these emotions that you may not even be aware of yet, because again, we're talking right after the call. You may not be aware of your emotional status for a few days. So, and this form will be available in the resources if you want to print it out and use it at your shift. It's a very simple form. It's casual. Nothing needs to be reported up. It's up to whoever. Even just a medic crew alone can do this. What was our mission? What went well? What could have gone better? What might have we done differently? Who needs to know in case there's any training things that are important? And then you have the option to reflect about emotions, but that's certainly not mandatory. And then kind of asking the question of, do we need CISM? Do we need chaplain? Do we need peer support? Or are we just going to keep an eye on things? What that does is it allows us to talk about it, and it kind of allows us to begin to process what happened in a very non-threatening way. And we're not asked to sit down and okay, tell us your feelings about this. Tell us your feelings right now. It's just kind of a very easy thing to do. And then if we need that CISM debriefing or that peer support debriefing afterward, that will happen at the standard time for that, which is typically not right after the call. And then establish trusted relationships with peers and coworkers, even friends, people that aren't in the career. It'll just make it easier to confidentially bring up concerns or red flags that you might notice. If you don't have a close relationship with someone and you try to even kindly and gently say, hey, I've noticed these things. I'm really worried about you. If there's not a trusted relationship that's already established, that is not going to land well. It's not, they're not going to take it as you actually care about them. They might be put off by it. Jessica.
Sometimes I've heard that fire service members aren't comfortable talking to people in their own station. And if that's the case for you, there is a virtual first responder support group through Harbor of Grace Recovery Center. And that's in Harford County. And if you'd like, after today's program, Ashley, I can send you that link so that people can have that. Someone's saying, please also mention Baltimore County EAP. Sometimes
Yes,
people
Yep.
don't want to go to EAP because certain EAP companies may need to report information back to the fire department. If that's the case, if you really need that pure confidentiality, that's where a therapist would come in handy, or that's where the Harbor of Grace virtual peer support group meeting could be a resource as well, if you don't feel comfortable talking to people within your own station.
Mhm. And just to talk a bit more about that, EAP, our EAP providers, and I was just elbows deep into that list of many, if not all of them, are not culturally competent, as in really understanding of what the fire service is all about. Not to say at all that those therapists can't help. That's not saying that. But the Baltimore County Peer Support Team, we do have a vetted clinician list. All of the therapists on the list have been vetted as culturally competent, are accepting new clients. They are familiar with and work with fire, police, EMS, military, and they have a deep understanding of what it means to be in this career. Hence, it seems to be a little bit easier. They're also typically versed in trauma recovery and the most up-to-date and best practices as far as trauma recovery, which a lot of the EAP providers may or may not have those qualifications. So there's many resources. There is a Cortico app. The app is available to career members, volunteer members, and family members. There's a QR code. Ashley, maybe afterwards I can send that, and it can be posted on the YouTube. And there's like a login. All of the peer support people's numbers are on there, and even a anonymous ring down line where if you want to be connected with one of these vetted clinicians, you can call that number even anonymously and be referred to someone. So all of those things are very important to mention.
And someone asked, is it 24 hours?
What is it? The anonymous peer support line?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yep. And then, of course, there's 988. That's the crisis hotline. That is 24 hours as well. And through that line, that is not fire department connected. That's, I believe that's a national line, but there's local call centers for that. That is a crisis hotline for anyone in crisis to be connected with resources. So retirement and injuries, they can bring a sense of isolation that can cause distress, honestly, when members are separated from their trusted people. So the importance to maintain communication. So many retirees, what we tend to do in the fire service is place our entire identity into the fire service. We live and we breathe it. And when we retire, it feels like a Band-Aid has been ripped off of an open wound. And it can be very distressing, honestly, and we don't talk about that. And then what tends to happen is if you've been one to, specifically in previous generations where it wasn't, you weren't encouraged to actually talk about how you were feeling or to acknowledge that certain calls have affected you, after retirement is when these things are going to come up. And when you're isolated and you have a lot of time to think about things that are kind of like running like a broken record in your head, that can cause a lot of problems. Have you experienced anything like that in your practice, Jessica?
Absolutely. So I think when people are getting close to retirement, that it's important to start thinking about the things that you used to do and starting to get some of those things back and going. So that when you retire, you're not just going to have this whole just emptiness in life, that those things already start and then they can be part of your routine. Because with so much time and energy, there's so much identity with this job, and there's going to be potentially a big hole in life without it. So if you could start that maybe if possible, a few years before, or if not, a few months before. I have a few people caseload who started seeking out support about 6 months to a year before they retired to make sure that they were really ready for it. So more proactive, the better, if possible. Sometimes I know you're working overtime and you can't do it.
Mhm. Yeah, the thing about all this stuff is that this is not a passive process. Um, you really just do have to acknowledge that this job is going to get to you. Not 100% of people it's going to get to, but a vast majority of us, it is going to get to us one way or the other. And, you know, continuing down this path of I'm fine, whatever, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, until one day it's not fine. And it's kind of like having a little cough and going to the doctor and they, they can treat it pretty easily, or waiting until it turns into full-blown pneumonia and then it's, quite difficult to treat. It's kind of the same thing with this stuff, where if we can start to address things right as they come up, it's a lot easier to recover than waiting an entire career, or like I did, 18 years of all this built up stuff. And then it ended up taking me almost 3 years to get out of the other side, kind of climbing out of that hole, which, I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. And I can't I can't keep this information to myself, because in sharing my story, I have had so many people come to me, people who I never in a million years would have expected, that are actually felt the same exact way I did, that shared a very similar story, that described how they were feeling, which was like the same way that I felt. And it feels very much so like we all are experiencing these things, and we're all unique, and we're all a little bit different. We've all had different experiences, different life experiences, but the tendency to hold things in for fear that we're going to be judged, for fear that the way that we feel is wrong, or, we're alone in the way that we feel, or, no one else feels this way. I must be, if I say that I feel this way, people are going to look at me and think I can't do the job. But really what's happening is a lot of our experiences are very similar, and you won't even know that until you start talking about it. Talking more about connection, having a trusted person or people. And it can be a friend, a family member, a coworker, a therapist, whatever, whoever your person is, someone on standby before things get bad. So I like to call it a buddy system, where, you say, hey, can you be my buddy, where if things, go south, I can call you and we can chat. And hopefully it's someone who you choose, someone who is non-judgmental, who will let you talk, and who doesn't think that they need to offer you all the solutions unless you would like assistance with coming up with solution ideas. But just getting the information out and being able to talk to someone about it is incredibly important. And having that person before there's a problem is really, really helpful. It's just important if and when you need to ask for help. And it also goes both ways, because that other person will have you in the same sense. What connection does for our brains, it does a lot. And I think Jessica would probably be better to talk about this if you feel comfortable. Yeah.
I think that I'm going to be covering connection when we get into polyvagal theory, and then when we get into some of my slides. So if you want to roll through some of this, and also for the sake of time, just time check at 7:55.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So learning to be aware of what's happening in our body. Awareness of yourself body, emotions, your thoughts, being curious about these things can offer valuable insight and small steps you can take to start to feel better. And this goes back to when Jessica was talking about dissociation earlier and how we don't leave our brains at work. And when we dissociate at work, we dissociate at home. So this means that we oftentimes are neglecting our physical bodies. We're not drinking enough water. We're not sleeping enough. We're neglecting our mental wellness. We're isolating ourselves. And we're just doing this as a survival mechanism to just simply make it through the day. So these are just some questions that you can ask yourself, simple questions to help yourself come back into present awareness and try to assess where you are. Are there aches, pains, injuries, health issues you've been ignoring or postponing? Think about why you've been ignoring or postponing it. Are you participating in regular physical activity, even if it's a walk? Are you walking the dog? Are you playing with your kids? Are you whatever your physical activity thing is? Are you finding time for basic things like eating well, sleeping, taking care of yourself physically? As Jessica mentioned earlier, our mental well-being and our physical well-being are directly connected and they affect each other quite significantly. Psychological, how do you talk to yourself? Your thoughts become things. And your thoughts can really affect the reality that you live in. As I said earlier, your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination or your thoughts. So if you're saying, you know, nobody wants to talk to me, nobody wants to be around me, your brain will behave as if that's true. So your thoughts are important because thoughts become things. You have a thought, that thought creates an emotion. That emotion drives your behaviors and actions, and then your behaviors and actions influence the outcome. So also in the resources, there is a My Scope of Control worksheet that you can print out. It kind of just talks about, oftentimes for me, I found myself kind of thinking too much about things that I have absolutely no control over. And it just simply became unhealthy for me. So just this simple graphic and thinking about what do I have control over? What can I influence? And what is completely out of my control might give you just a better idea of how to hone into what you're focusing on. And Jessica, do you have anything to add about that?
I think that it's extremely important to take a look at what's truly within your control and what's not. And a lot of people who are very stuck are very much honing in on what's not in my control. That I can't control where I work, when I work. I'm constantly mandated. I can't make my partner love me more. But if we can look at the things of, well, what can I do to take care of myself? Can I eat? Can I drink water? Can I shower? Can I get movement in? Can I attempt a conversation? Can I get myself into treatment? Can I attempt to make changes in my schedule? The more that we can find within our control and have choices will bring us into a different autonomic state, and I'll talk about that soon.
All right, psychological, just some additional questions. Do you feel supported by the people you spend the most of your time with? They say that like you are who you spend most of your time with. So is that something that's a positive in your life or the opposite? How are your relationships affecting your current mental space? And how do you prioritize your time? The cup exercise, I say like you have 4 cups, one of them's work, one of them's family, and then you can make the other 2 and you have 10 tokens and you have to spend those 10 tokens. And where are you putting them? Where are you choosing to spend your time? Time is our most valuable resource. When you spend it, it's gone. All right, Jessica, take it away.
All right. So bear with me. I'm a super big nerd about this, but I also have heard that Rachel and Ashley are big nerds as well. So polyvagal theory, this is the art and the science coming together to talk about our brain and our body and why everything that Rachel has talked about is important. So polyvagal theory, vagal meaning the vagus nerve, and poly meaning that there are two parts of our vagus nerve. There is the part of our vagus nerve that allows us to rest and digest and restore and recover and repair. And there is a part of the nervous system that is protective, it's adaptive, and it collapses us, it immobilizes, and keeps us alive. It ensures safety. So the autonomic nervous system is a system in the body, the parasympathetic nervous system that I just talked about, the brake of the nervous system, or there's the sympathetic nervous system, which is the gas of the nervous system. And so these two parts of the system work together to either energize us and get us through life, increasing our blood pressure, our metabolism, our energy level, or they can serve us and slow everything down. And the nervous system, don't worry about doing anything about it. It's going to run automatically, unconsciously, without you having to do a darn thing about it. I love this slide. If you can think of it like a traffic light of a green, we are going straight through. Our yellow that we are proceeding with caution, and then our red that we're going to stop. But the thing about first responders that you guys know about yourself, green means go, yellow means go faster, and red means step on it. And so a lot of times when first responders come into my caseload, that they're spending a lot of time into this red zone completely shut down. So the way that the chart works, we look at the top part in this green area of where we feel. This is the area of safety of our nervous system. Is there any way to make that? Oh, there was something that was popping up.
Let me see.
The
Sorry.
area of, no problem. Oh, there it is.
Is that the full thing? I'm having a hard time. There we go.
Yeah, that's fine. So when we feel safe in the parasympathetic branch of our nervous system, the rest, the digest, if you look in the category that says behaviors, this is when we are essentially living our best life. We are social, we're connected. Human beings are meant for connection. We are compassionate. We are mentally and physically calm. We can think and we can feel at the same time. And we are able not only to stay calm within ourselves, but our presence is a form of regulation and connecting to other people. You know that when you walk into a room, if you're in a good mood, you sit down next to somebody else, you start laughing, they start laughing, and then each person follows suit. This is what happens when we are in the social engagement system. This is the ideal part of our nervous system. And the behaviors that the social engagement system increases our ability to heal. Our immune system is functioning as it needs to. We can digest food. We can actually hear voices, and we're able to really listen. And we show other people through our body language, through our tone of voice, through our eye contact that we're safe. When we're in this zone, we don't have to be so defensive. We're just able to move around and be relaxed and be fluid. That's not the goal of life. The goal of life is, of course, everybody wants to get here, but threat happens, as Rachael said, whether it's real or whether it's perceived. And if you think about the nervous system like a ladder that you're going to climb down, as soon as there's a threat, we go into a protective form of survival. This is the gas of the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. This is mobilizing. So this is fight or flight. This is where we're going to get anxious. We're going to get panicked. We're going to get restless. They're going to be full of potentially rage or anxiety. These are your big heightened emotions because adrenaline comes in and cortisol comes in to prolong us to stay into the fight of whatever could potentially kill us. The goal is to be able to go up that ladder to get into green. But with the job, with the ongoing nature of stress, a lot of people get stuck in fight or flight, that this response doesn't get discharged. You never stop stepping on the gas. So when we stay in prolonged states of mobilization or fight or flight, our blood pressure goes up, our heart rate goes up. We have more of a pain tolerance, we're reactive, and then we have this term, it's called auditory exclusion. We can't quite hear things the way that we would when we're at the top of the ladder in green. So you get into with your spouse, and when you say, I didn't hear you, you really didn't hear the person, because your body protectively to stay alive is either hearing really high frequency sounds, screams, or low frequency, almost like growling sounds in order to keep you alive. And as first responders, you guys are hearing very tons and tons and tons of sensory information all day long. Your bodies get overstimulated, they get overloaded, and even just that sound can put you into a state of fight or flight. When we are in the sympathetic part of our nervous system, we are starting to close down in social connection. So we can't see or hear or feel things in a safe way. So the world starts getting smaller because we have tunnel vision on top of auditory exclusion. We found the threat and we're not going to take our eyes off of it because that would get us killed. So we can no longer detect the feelings of others because we're not able to really look and process. We can't see facial expressions. Our digestion shuts down. This even happens for those of you when you're traveling, if you end up constipated or if you end up not able to go to the bathroom because your body decides I'm not safe, so I can't process and eliminate foods the same way. And in this state of fight or flight, we're on edge. We don't need to be able to connect with humans because that wasn't an option. We're just going to survive. If we cannot fight, and fight meaning going into self-defense, or flight meaning fleeing and creating space between us and that threat, we go down that ladder and we go into dorsal vagal collapse is what it's called. It's also known as a life threat zone. This is when we're immobilized. It is not a conscious choice. It happens automatically without our awareness. Our body shuts down. This is where dissociation happens. We are numb, depressed, helpless, hopeless, checked out. We can't engage with other people. We can't communicate. Our world closes in. We're not making eye contact. Everything gets very small. So if you think about kind of a bear in hibernation, this is the path of least resistance. In this system, our heart rate drops, blood pressure drops. We're not breathing the same way. We can't really feel our body. As I talked about dissociation earlier, the body is physically present and the mind has gone somewhere else because it's not safe. This is the area of where we get suicidal if it's going to happen. Life doesn't make sense. The world is dangerous. There might be survivor's guilt in this state. There might be high levels of shame. I'm a bad person. The difficult part about this state is that what goes down that ladder, so from safety to danger to life threat, we must come up and through. So for those of you who have experienced severe levels of depression, we have to come through fight or flight. So likely once we're depressed, we get an idea to start going out and attempting to connect, we get anxious and that collapses us back down into survival mode. That's a difficult place to be in of back and forth within our nervous system, and it takes some time to come all the way back up the ladder into green. That's where the coping skills, that's where that connection gets to be important, trying out activities. So go over that self-care in a little bit.
So let me know when
yeah.
you want me to go to the next slide.
Yep. So if you want, you can slide it on over to the next one.
Okay.
I liked this chart. I wanted to throw it in here because this is how we take red, yellow, green of polyvagal theory, and then we apply it to first responders. So in this this green category of readiness, you're going to see the social engagement system. This is when we're living our best life. This is when things are going well. We're able to connect with people on a social level. We connect with ourselves on a spiritual level, emotional level. Our body feels good, our mind feels good, we feel good about the world for the most part. Then we move into a state of, you could look at the yellow and also the orange as a state of that sympathetic fight or flight. This is where the job starts taking its toll on people. Sleep is affected, mood is affected, the world is starting to close down, and we get very defensive and we get very protective. So we stop doing things that are healthy for us. And as that progresses, from getting reactive, we start moving into either emotional or physical injury. In the injured category, you're starting to see some of these symptoms of chronic stress that that you saw on the red of being shut down, you're disengaged, the nightmares are starting to happen. Nightmares, your brain's way of trying to tell you that there is something important going on, that you need to know about it. You're not getting it in your dream. So now I'm going to continue to tell you in this nightmare, something is wrong and you need to change it. And then in our critical zone, that is our immobilized, life threat, collapsed. We're feeling just completely at a loss, barely functioning. If you are finding yourself in this critical zone or in this injured zone, there is help out there, and it's really important that you get it to be able to prolong yourself for yourself and for families. Rachel, you want to change that slide for me?
Yes.
Please, or maybe I can do it. Okay, so in post-traumatic stress, some of the results of going through post-traumatic stress, when there is a trauma, that there is oftentimes a great loss. And that loss can include loss of support, loss of safety, of identity, of protection. And so when that loss occurs, then sometimes that's where that gets paired with that moral injury, that now the world doesn't make sense. The world is a dangerous place. When we have an incident, want to try to find ways to make meaning of that. And that's the term post-traumatic growth. It's making meaning out of suffering and to be able to figure out, what have I learned from this and what have I gained from this? And you're not going to be able to do that right away on the day of the event. It does take time. It does take reflection. And I'll get into that in a few moments. But there is a difference between just kind of collapsing inward versus being able to take accountability for it. So you want to find ways to make a choice, to figure out what you need to do to get yourself in a better place and to follow through. And it's, as Rachel has said in this slide, that it's not a linear journey. You're going to be kind of all over the place, but this is how we make meaning out of suffering. And having that growth mindset. I hear a lot of times in my therapy sessions of my clients complaining about other people in the fire service being victims. And this is really post-traumatic growth, is being able to say, this was difficult and I learned from it and I grew from it, and here's how. Anything you want to comment on, Rach?
The only thing I want to add is like relating this to planting a seed. When you plant a seed, you don't have a plant the next day. It takes a lot of like patience and nurturing and watering and sunlight, and like a lot of different things have to come together in a quite deliberate and consistent way to grow that seed to a plant. And this is kind of the same thing in that you with the understanding that you're moving towards something and you're taking action, and that the change is not going to happen overnight, and there may be some backslides, and that's okay because that's part of the journey, but to just keep putting one foot in front of the next. That would really be the only main thing that I have to add there.
I love that. Very cool. When someone starts moving towards post-traumatic growth, that there is an acknowledgement of the struggle, of the pain and the disorientation and the world being turned upside down and whatever type of loss happened for that person, of starting to recognize it and feeling the struggle is to feel the pain because the pain hurts, and not to dissociate from it, to learn to be with it. And then in getting back into day-to-day activities and getting yourself stable, and doing this through nutrition routines, exercise routines, going to religious or spiritual service, if that sort of thing, being in nature, but trying to bring back healthy functioning, because within trauma, our world gets smaller and we start closing down and we start isolating. So taking these little risks do make actual changes within your brain. It's a term called neuroplasticity. So we want to start taking risks and doing new and novel things. When we start moving post-traumatic growth, we're reflecting, we're thinking of what happened, the impact that it has on us, how it may have shaped us, how it may have changed us. And then we want to start thinking about bringing our life into finding new value and new needs, and then a big picture perspective of it, of how am I different? The way that I kind of talk to clients about post-traumatic is, if we look at, we have a vase and then the vase shatters and we end up putting that vase together with beautiful glue, and it becomes this mosaic. It's not going to be the same that it was, but it can be different, but it could still also be beautiful. It's not broken. It just kind of needs to be reworked and reintegrated. And that's what happens in therapy, is that we take the parts of you that you were before, see how you're different, and then try to figure out what's next for you. And you may not know what's next, and that may be terrifying, but at the same time, there is hope in there. Anything you add,
Mhm.
Rachel?
I think your broken vase analogy, that's one of my favorite things. And I like to say for myself, when my vase broke, there were a lot of the pieces that like I just didn't want anymore, that just did not I didn't want to carry forward into the next, vase transformation. That could be people that have, not been helpful, or habits, or just things that I was holding on to that I didn't need to. Everything doesn't have to go back into your rebuild. This is the time to say, okay, this is going to be, a total renovation. Maybe we're just changing the bathroom, or maybe we're just going to take it down to the studs and start fresh. It's different for everybody.
All right. This is a slide that I oftentimes like to show clients in session. So when we get really overwhelmed, we lose access to what's called executive functioning. So this is the front part of our brain that allows us to make decisions and think critically and be functioning adults. We lose access to that. And so when we lose access, if we know what our coping skills are, that's when you kind of forget. Like, I just thought of this whole list of these great things that I was going to do when I'm upset and I can't remember a thing about it. So we need these visuals to remind us. So if you like this slide, I would recommend that you take it, you put it on your phone. So if you get overwhelmed, you can look at it and you can see and go, oh yeah, here's what it is. So the way that this chart works is we can take the emotion at the top level of this chart. And then if you look into the center of it, the center of it is going to describe the body sensation that's happening with that emotion. And then the bottom level of that chart is going to give some suggestions and some alternatives. So this is based off of what happens to our body within our nervous system when this emotion comes up, and whether it's a fight response of coming close to that threat, such as anger, or a flight response of fear, of creating distance between that threat, or even a sadness response, which may be the lower part of our nervous system potentially, and needing to kind of close inward and rest and digest. So I like this chart because it gives options. When people are feeling stuck, they feel like they may not have options, they may not have choices, and they may feel powerless. So when you look at this chart, you can see, let me try this and see if it works. And if this doesn't work, let me try something else on this chart. So for example, when you look at fear, our nervous system is going into the gas state of the sympathetic nervous system, into fight or flight. Our eyes are widened because we need to be able to see better. The mind is racing, our heart's pounding, the breathing is shallow because we have to try to get away from that threat. We have butterflies in our stomach because our digestion isn't working properly. We don't need it, we're just trying to get out of there. And we have fidgety hands and feet because we have adrenaline and cortisol pumping through the body to get us to get up and go. And then we're sensitive to touch because our pain tolerance is different. There is a tightness in the chest. The body gets involved with our emotions, and our emotions get involved with our body. So if you were having a fear response, you may look at this chart and you may say, I need to find safety. And in order to do that, I need to find an exit. I either need to slow down because my nervous system is going too fast, or I need to speed up because I'm not moving fast enough to get away from the threat. I may need to leave to create distance for a flight response, or I need to be further away. So this is just one example to play around with if you want to see if any of these strategies work for you.
I,
Next
I
slide,
love
unless
this
you have something.
image. I just wanted to say, we're so used to like ignoring things and saying, I'm sad, whatever, and just kind of ignoring it. But like, you almost have to sit in it and try to, you know, because something that's ignored will, it starts as a gentle tap, tap, tap on the door. And if you ignore it, it's going to eventually become a battering ram. So when these things are happening and you notice anger or fear coming up or sadness or whatever it is, acknowledging it and stop kind of pushing it to the side, because it will continue to resurface and come back stronger and stronger and stronger over time until you give it the respect that it wants, which is to just be acknowledged.
So I give this example of our emotions. A child at the pool, and any who have children and take them to the pool or have seen children at the pool, you have the kid who's like, mom, 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 mom. And the parent's like, what? And then the kid's like, hi, and runs away. That's kind of what our emotions are like. If we pay attention to them and acknowledge them, then we can figure out what's going on with them. But if we ignore them, they get louder, they get more incessant, and they get more difficult to manage. But when you start tending to your emotions on a regular basis, then they can dial down. You can do something about it. I saw a question on there about kind of the insight into working with a therapist. So that process really becomes of one, like Ray mentioned, finding somebody who's culturally competent, who understands the job that you do. So you don't have to go in there and explain things. And also so that you're not going in there and potentially freaking out the therapist who's not culturally competent. And then that therapist feels too much suffering for you because of what you go through. But the process of working with therapists would be in being able to unload in a trusted relationship, learning coping strategies, potentially learning about your brain, learning about your body, learning about your stress response, what you can do about it. And then that therapist can help you if you're struggling in your personal relationships, figure out communication styles, ways to improve talking with your partner. They look at your lifestyle routines with you, help you figure out what's within your control, what's not. That they can really be this safe place to go over thoughts and feelings that you may not be able to talk to your spouse or your friends about. You may not want to take that home with you and tell somebody what's really going on, but with a therapist, you could do that. Rachel, did you want to share any other pieces about being in therapy?
Thank you. Yes, I do want to address that. And before I forget, because my brain is like squirrel, James asked a question about like naming emotions. And I wish I would have put it in here, the emotion wheel, where if you just, James, or anybody who's interested in this, because really naming emotions is quite difficult, especially if you're not used to doing it. You just emotion wheel, and it's this big like rainbow colored thing, and let's say it's anger, and then it breaks anger into a few, other categories, and then it breaks those categories down even more. And it kind of allows you to choose from this very neatly designed word bank of, oh, okay, I'm feeling, defeated, or I'm feeling dismissed. Things that don't just generally come up as how you're feeling. It's super interesting. And therapy, let me see. I went, once I realized I had an issue, I sought out therapy, didn't realize the importance of cultural competency. So I had a few therapists so let me backstep a little. I started with EAP, went to a few therapists, did what I was supposed to do, stepped up, decided I need help, went and found a therapist, went to therapy, and went for a while, which was like just standard talk therapy. So after like 15 sessions, I'm like, I don't feel any better. I did exactly what I was supposed to do. I went to therapy. I did all this. So that then told me, well, okay, I guess what I originally thought is correct. I'm just broken. This is, you know, the normal culmination of this job. This is how it's gonna, you know, end, and not how it's gonna end like that, but how, like, this is just a normal way to feel after this career. Well, it turns out that that's actually absolutely not true. None of the therapists that I had seen before um, were had expertise in trauma recovery, which is what I needed. And I did not know that. So I did what I was supposed to do in my mind, because I did not know the importance of having someone with that expertise was. So by the time I found an appropriate therapist, EMDR certified, trauma certified, it literally opened this huge door for me. And I certainly wasn't hopscotching through it, but it was like a light that I had never seen before. I was seeing the sun for the first time, and it allowed me to reframe um, kind of how I it allowed me to reframe that this is just the way I am, I'm broken, into, oh, I do not have to stay this way, and I don't want to stay this way, and there are things that I can do. And that was incredible, actually.
The goodness of fit between the therapist and the client is everything, because of that human piece of connection. That relationship is that foundation. If you're in therapy and you don't trust your therapist, or you don't like your therapist, then try to find a new one, because that connection is paramount for you being able to trust enough to say what's really on your mind. As far as these ways of self-care, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of this. So if you think of self-care in a few ways of these detoxes, if you can think of it, our body physically detoxes through exercise, through sweat. You don't have to on yourself in order to do it. You just need to find a way, a movement practice for yourself. Same thing with good nutrition. Make sure you eat all your macros, your carbs, your proteins, your fats, your vegetables, to help your body with fiber clean through, get your digestion working well. When we have good digestion, our brains feel better, our emotions feel better, our body feels better. Have hobbies. Rachel has a great slide of the breathing and grounding strategies, and self-care is also about our connections. So if you don't have good family support, consider joining a support group, taking a class. Animals are great too. I have an animal who's asleep in the corner right now. Of course, chocolate, of course. Rachel, you want to do next slide?
Sure. I just want to add real quick, in the PDFs, there's a resiliency self-assessment that you can do. And so after you have your score, then there's just some like reflection questions that you can ask yourself. And then there's this strengthening your resiliency worksheet, or it's not really a worksheet, it's just an info thing that talks about a lot of different ways, you know, breathing exercise. We hear a lot about breathing, but there's visualization, exercise, touch. And what these things do is they release these chemicals in your body, these feel-good chemicals like the oxytocin and dopamine and things like that that we're lacking. Also, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice, but next time you go to your doctor, you can ask them for a vitamin and mineral panel. A lot of us are chronically low in vitamin D specifically, sometimes magnesium, different vitamins and minerals that can actually cause or mimic mental health you know, problems. They can worsen depression, they can worsen anxiety. So those kind of things are important to kind of ask your healthcare provider to have those tests done to see if you need any supplementation.
Yep. And just to nail in, yeah, magnesium is also fantastic. So just make sure that you have good quality of magnesium as well. Different types of self-care, just hammering this in a little bit more. One thing I liked about this slide is the self-care one on intellectual information. So as you probably can figure out, Rachel and I are both lifelong learners. We're always reading, we're always trying to discover new information. When we're reading, if we haven't been through that situation before, we're finding out about it. We're rewiring our brain through the things that we're learning. Finances are a form of self-care, not overspending like so many people do, scrolling through Amazon, ordering too many things you don't actually need. That physical piece is so, so important, guys. I won't talk anymore about sleep because you know it's important and most of you aren't getting it, but please do try. And the part about post-traumatic growth that I didn't mention is being able to have this appreciation for life. Yes, life is difficult. It includes a tremendous amount of suffering, but when we can find gratitude for what's happening in life, even if it's super small, it does change our brain. It does boost oxytocin. It does lift states of depression. If you continue to do that for many weeks at a time of having states of gratitude, gratitude journals, etc. Any last thoughts, Rachel? I think that's our last slide.
Yeah, I think it's just important for us to be aware of what our coping mechanisms are. We all have coping mechanisms, and I know that we talked about a little bit earlier that some of them are helpful and some of them can be hurtful. Hurtful ones being like drinking too much, risky behaviors, even going to the gym too much can be something that's distracting you. So kind of like just again, being aware of what your coping mechanisms are. If you like to journal, write down in advance. When I'm feeling angry, this is what kind of brings me back into my body. When I'm feeling really sad, or when I'm feeling ashamed, or when I'm feeling guilty, this is what helps me. These are a couple of, somebody in the comments earlier mentioned music and songs. Absolutely. And you want, write in advance or make a playlist for when I feel like crap. I'm going to listen to this. These are songs that, always lift my spirits. And there is actual scientific research talking about how music can help get us out of a funk, truly. So we'll just go over. So we learned about compartmentalization, how to process emotions and traumatic events, how to identify red flags in yourself and others, the importance of connection, how to be aware of what's happening in your body and mind, tools how to mitigate stressors at the job, post-traumatic growth, practical ways to stay present, ground, and complete the stress response. And I fully understand that this all of these things we talked about could be expanded on in depth. This is kind of just skimming the surface. And let me take a look here. So we are responsible for our own well-being. It's very easy to say, well, I got a divorce and now my life is screwed, or I suffered a tragic loss and I which those can be absolutely horrific. And this career can be tragic and horrific at times. It's physically, emotionally, and spiritually exhausting. But it's important to remember that in order to remain healthy, we have to take action. It's not a passive process. We have to take action. It has to be consistent. It does take discipline. And in order to move forward, you just have to put one foot in front of the other. Even if that move forward is a millimeter, that is absolutely okay. And it's going to look different for everyone. And Jessica, you can expand on that in any way, and then we can take it. I'll look through the chat to see what questions we have here.
I think that she nailed it with that. Rachel and I are always looking to get better. We would really appreciate any feedback that you have, whether positive, negative, or neutral areas for improvement. We thank you so much for being here tonight.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for saying that, Jessica, because I meant to say that at the very beginning and I forgot. This is the very first time that we have taught this. So you guys got to hear the beta version of Mind Over Mayday. So any feedback that you have would truly be greatly appreciated, just to make this program as good as it could possibly be. And if anyone else has any other questions, comments, concerns, I'm having a hard time here. Mag will help you sleep. Yes, it absolutely does. Uh, and- yeah, music. Am I missing anything here? I'm having a hard time seeing the. Yeah, let's see. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. I truly appreciate it. I really wanted to offer something a bit more comprehensive than just the standard awareness. I hope you all found any little nugget of thing that you could take away tonight and put into action in your own life. And again, much gratitude and thank you.
Thank you all
Thank you
so
so much
much.
for being here, both of you. This is such an
Absolutely.
important topic.
Thank you for
People
having
tend to
us.
internalize stuff, and there's so much available out there, and there's really no reason at this point. I mean, there's help if you need help. There's there's all sorts of availability, and there's no reason that that needs to occur. There's just not. It's in the year 2025 is very different than say when I started in 1981. Um, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. And this so much important information was given out tonight. It was very helpful, I think.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And unless anybody has any other questions, I'm all done. And I just saw that you wrote no chocolate. Yes, chocolate. Antioxidants. Those are so healthy for you.
That chocolate is my weakness and my go-to. But it makes me happy. So
Yes. It releases those endorphins.
Right.
and that's yeah, and it works. But I always start out every day. Every day is a good day. It's an opportunity to help, and you do it to help people. This is why we're all here. It's an opportunity to help,
Mhm.
and it's my way of giving back. So, um, whenever you see bad things, but you also see some really good things, whether it's saving someone's life or delivering a baby, it's all out there, and that's things you can remember about and think about too.
Right. I
I still
always say
remember the
like,
first baby I resuscitated,
oh,
and it's that that person is now in his 30s,
fuck,
graduated from college and everything. But
making that kind of difference in a life is
yeah, I
nothing
first
like it.
I first met him at 6 weeks.
Wow. That's incredible. That's truly life-changing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good out there in what we do and see, just as there is some very bad things. But you're I think you're incredibly accurate with whether you
Mhm.
compartmentalize it and how you bring it in or out.
Absolutely. All
But
right.
don't forget about the good. Everyone here does a
Yes.
lot of good.
Yes. We are a crucial part of the medical system, and we are
Absolutely.
absolute professionals who truly have a passion for this line of work, which is, you can't do this job without having a calling for it. It takes a very special kind of person.
It most certainly does.
For those who want MIMS continuing ed, there was a link went out in the chat earlier. Please fill it out accurately. We can't change it. If you don't fill it out accurately, there's not much I can do about it.
And Jessica, thank you so much for joining us this evening. You really added an immense amount of information and knowledge from a clinical standpoint, which I think was absolutely
Mhm.
needed and essential
Very
in this.
complimentary, the two of you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, working with first responders is my true honor and passion, and I love doing. The goal is to really work with to help make other clinicians culturally competent, because there aren't enough of us, and that needs to change as well. So passion. So
Mhm.
I'm really glad to be here tonight.
And it's a way of giving back to the community, which I think is important.
Absolutely.
Everyone should be able to participate.
Yes.
Well,
All right. Well,
I
thank you
will
so
hang on
much.
Okay.
for a few minutes. Thank you,
Mhm.
everybody, for attending tonight. If anyone
Might be
has any
letting the
questions,
host.
they can put it in the chat.
Yeah.
If you're following the chat, everyone, you'll notice there are lots of links for various resources in Baltimore County. It can start with just contacting the ADO if necessary, but there's a
So
lot out
there,
there. And the ADO is
yep.
there 24/7. I get to talk to them a lot.
And ADO can activate our peer team. You can also do that through an officer. You can also do that through the Cortico app. And we're trying to get a link. At a certain point recently, the list of names and telephone numbers of everyone on the team should have been emailed out to every station, career and volunteer. And it was asked for those to be posted in all stations, but I've been to multiple stations lately and have not seen that list, unfortunately.
And that would be for
So
Baltimore County, by the way. There's multiple jurisdictions here.
yes, Baltimore County. And if your jurisdiction does not have peer support, there are, I think there's a state peer support team or CISM team as well. And you can also call 988 and they can put you in touch. And even though if you're not in our jurisdiction, you are more than welcome to contact me. And I have a plethora of resources that are in other counties as well, just from kind of the connections that I've made throughout the state of Maryland. It's kind of limited to the state of Maryland, but I do have resources for other counties, and you can email me.
And our ADO has been actually very good about connecting us for other counties for things also.
Excellent.
They have a much better phone book than me.
Good. Good, good, good. It's good to have a wide network.
Mhm. Wow.
Okay.
Things. It was a very good talk.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you very much for allowing us to
Thank you very much
Yeah,
for
thanks
coming.
so
do it.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was nervous when it started raining that we were gonna have power outage.
I had a little
That'd be
bit of
bad.
connectivity issues on the Wi-Fi here.
Right.
Mhm. All right. Should we hang tight here, Dr. Sable, until?
I don't think anybody has any more questions. I'm just going to hang for another
Yeah.
minute. There's only 17
Okay.
people on.